The Dallas housing market is collapsing. Homes that once sold in hours now sit empty for months. And the governor of Texas is scrambling to respond as families lose everything they worked for. Texas has always been known as the land of opportunity. For decades, people moved to cities like Dallas for affordable homes and good jobs. The promise was simple: work hard, save money, and own a piece of the American dream. But that dream is fading fast. The Dallas housing market is in freefall. Home prices are dropping at rates not seen since the 2008 financial crisis. Sellers are panicking, buyers are walking away, and mortgage companies are starting to worry about what comes next. Governor Greg Abbott has been forced to address the crisis publicly. His tone has shifted from confident to defensive. Critics say he waited too long to act. Supporters say the problem is bigger than any one state can handle alone. This is not just about numbers on a chart. This is about real people losing their homes. This is about families watching their savings vanish overnight. This is about a housing system that promised stability but delivered chaos. Let's break down what is happening in Dallas right now. Let's look at why this crash is happening. And let's explore what it means for the future of Texas and the entire country. #, the current situation in Dallas. Dallas is one of the fastest growing cities in America. For years, people flooded into the metro area from California, New York, and other high-cost states. They came for lower taxes, bigger homes, and a lower cost of living. But the boom has turned into a bust. In early 2024, the median home price in Dallas was around $510,000. By late 2025, that number has dropped to approximately $430,000. That is a decline of nearly 16% in less than 2 years. Some neighborhoods have seen even steeper drops. Areas like Frisco, Plano, and McKinney once commanded premium prices. Today, homes in these suburbs are sitting on the market for 90 days or more. Many sellers are cutting their asking prices by tens of thousands of dollars just to attract buyers. Real estate agents describe the market as frozen. Open houses that used to draw dozens of visitors now see only a handful. Bidding wars are a thing of the past. Instead, buyers are negotiating aggressively, knowing that sellers are desperate. The inventory of unsold homes has exploded. In November 2025, Dallas has over 4 months of housing supply available. That is double what it was just 1 year ago. When supply increases and demand falls, prices drop. It is basic economics, but the impact goes far beyond statistics. #, real people losing real money. Meet Jennifer and Mark Thompson. They bought a home in Allen, Texas in early 2023 for $570,000. They put down $100,000 and took out a mortgage for the rest. They believed they were making a smart investment. They believed the value would keep rising. Today, their home is worth about $480,000. They owe more on their mortgage than the house is worth. They are underwater by nearly $90,000 when you factor in their down payment. Jennifer works as a nurse. Mark is a software engineer. They are not reckless people. They followed the rules. They saved for years. They bought a home they could afford. But now they are trapped. If they sell, they will lose everything. If they stay, they are paying a mortgage on an asset that is losing value every month. They feel betrayed by a system that told them home ownership was the safest investment they could make. The Thompsons are not alone. Thousands of families across Dallas are in the same position. Some bought homes at the peak in late 2022 or early 2023. Others refinanced to pull cash out, thinking their equity would keep growing. Now they are stuck. Some families are choosing to walk away. They are letting their homes go into foreclosure rather than keep paying for an underwater asset. This is a painful decision. It destroys credit scores, creates emotional trauma, but for some, it feels like the only option. Now picture this. A young couple named Sarah and James Rodriguez saved for 5 years to buy their first home. They purchased a 3-bedroom house in Garland for $420,000 in March 2023. They were thrilled. They invited friends and family over. They painted the walls their favorite colors. They planted flowers in the yard. 2 years later, Similar homes in their neighborhood are selling for $350,000. Their dream home has become a financial nightmare. They cannot afford to sell. They cannot afford to stay. They feel trapped in a life they no longer recognize. Stories like these are playing out across the Dallas metro area every single day. Hashtag the ripple effects. When home values crash, the damage spreads quickly. Homeowners are not the only ones suffering. The entire local economy takes a hit. Construction companies are laying off workers. There is no reason to build new homes when existing homes are not selling. Contractors who once had months of work lined up now struggle to find projects. Real estate agents are leaving the industry. Many agents made a comfortable living during the boom years. Now commissions are down. Sales are slow. Some agents have gone months without closing a single deal. They are looking for work in other fields just to pay their bills. Home improvement stores are seeing fewer customers. When home values are rising, people invest in renovations. They upgrade kitchens. They remodel bathrooms. They add new decks and patios. But when values are falling, people stop spending. Why invest in a home that is losing value? Local governments are starting to worry about tax revenue. Property taxes fund schools, police departments, fire stations, and public services. When home values drop, tax revenue drops. Cities and counties will soon face budget shortfalls. The mortgage industry is also on edge. Banks and lenders made billions of dollars in loans during the boom. Now they are watching closely as more borrowers fall behind on payments. If foreclosures spike, lenders could face serious losses. This is how a housing crash becomes an economic crisis. Let's move forward and look at the history behind this collapse. Hashtag background. How we got here. To understand the current crisis, we need to go back several years. The Dallas housing market did not crash overnight. It was the result of decisions made over time. After the 2008 financial crisis, the Federal Reserve kept interest rates near zero for years. This made borrowing cheap. Mortgages became incredibly affordable. People rushed to buy homes. Demand surged. At the same time, Dallas was experiencing explosive population growth. Companies like Tesla, Oracle, and CBRE moved their headquarters to Texas. Tech workers followed. Retirees from California cashed out their expensive homes and moved to Dallas for a better lifestyle. This created a perfect storm of demand. Buyers competed fiercely for homes. Prices soared. In some neighborhoods, homes sold for $50,000 or more above asking price. Sellers held all the power. Investors jumped into the market as well. Private equity firms and real estate funds bought thousands of single-family homes in Dallas. They planned to rent them out or flip them for a profit. This drove prices even higher. Builders tried to keep up with demand. They constructed thousands of new homes across the Dallas suburbs. But construction costs were rising too. Labor shortages and supply chain issues made building more expensive. These costs were passed on to buyers. By 2022, the Dallas housing market was red hot. The median home price had doubled in less than 5 years. Everyone assumed prices would keep climbing forever. But then everything changed. Hashtag the causes of the crash. In March 2022, the Federal Reserve began raising interest rates to fight inflation. This was a dramatic shift. For over a decade, borrowing had been cheap. Now it was getting expensive fast. Mortgage rates shot up. In early 2022, a 30-year fixed mortgage had an interest rate around 3%. By late 2023, rates had climbed above 7%. This nearly doubled the monthly payment for the same loan amount. Suddenly, many buyers could no longer afford to purchase a home. A family that qualified for a $500,000 home at 3% could only afford a $350,000 home at 7%. Demand collapsed almost overnight, but prices did not fall immediately. Sellers refused to accept lower offers. They remembered the boom years. They believed the market would bounce back quickly, so homes sat on the market unsold. As months passed, reality set in. Sellers realized they had to lower prices or risk not selling at all. Price cuts became common. The decline accelerated. At the same time, population growth in Dallas started to slow. The wave of people moving from other states began to ease. Some people who moved to Texas during the pandemic started moving back. Remote work policies changed. Companies called workers back to the office. The flood of new residents turned into a trickle. Investors started selling too. Private equity firms that bought homes in 2021 and 2022 found themselves holding properties that were losing value. They began dumping inventory onto the market. This added even more supply and pushed prices down further. The combination of high mortgage rates, slowing population growth, and excess inventory created a perfect storm. The Dallas housing market was in freefall, but the story does not end here. ## the effects on everyday life. The housing crash is changing daily life for people across Dallas. It is not just about money. It is about how people feel and how they live. Families are delaying life decisions. Young couples are putting off having children because they cannot afford a bigger home. Parents are staying in smaller houses longer because they cannot sell without taking a huge loss. Divorce rates are rising in some communities. Financial stress is one of the leading causes of marital problems. When couples see their biggest asset lose value, tensions increase. Arguments about money become more frequent. Some marriages do not survive. Mental health is suffering too. Homeowners who are underwater feel trapped and hopeless. They lie awake at night worrying about their future. Anxiety and depression rates are climbing in areas hardest hit by the crash. Renters are feeling the effects as well. Landlords who bought properties as investments are now desperate for cash flow. Some are raising rents to cover their mortgage payments. Others are selling properties to cut their losses, forcing tenants to move. Communities are changing. Neighborhoods that once felt vibrant and growing now feel uncertain. For sale signs stay up for months. Abandoned construction projects sit unfinished. The sense of optimism that defined Dallas for years is fading. Schools are starting to see declining enrollment. When families cannot sell their homes, they cannot move to better school districts. When families leave the area entirely, schools lose students and funding. This is what a housing crash looks like on the ground. It is not just numbers and charts. It is real pain in real communities. Now let's talk about what experts are saying. ## expert analysis. Economists have been studying the Dallas housing market closely. Most agree that this crash was predictable. The warning signs were there for anyone paying attention. Dr. Emily Chun, a housing economist at Southern Methodist University, has been vocal about the issue. She argues that prices rose too fast and too high. She says the market became detached from economic fundamentals. When homes cost 10 times the median household income, something has to give. According to Dr. Chan, the Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes were necessary to control inflation, but they had a devastating effect on housing markets that were already overheated. Dallas was especially vulnerable because so much of its recent growth was driven by cheap credit and investor speculation. Real estate analyst Michael Torres has a different perspective. He believes the crash is part of a natural market cycle. He points out that housing markets always go through boom and bust periods. He argues that this correction was needed to bring prices back to affordable levels. Torres predicts that prices will stabilize in late 2026 or early 2027. He believes that once mortgage rates come down and inventory clears, demand will return. But he warns that it could take years for prices to recover to their previous highs. Not everyone is optimistic. Professor Linda Martinez from the University of Texas at Dallas warns that this crash could be worse than 2008 in some ways. She notes that household debt levels are higher now than they were back then. She worries that a wave of foreclosures could destabilize the entire financial system. Martinez also points to the role of institutional investors. When private equity firms dumped properties onto the market, they accelerated the crash. She believes that investors created artificial demand during the boom and are now creating artificial supply during the bust. This makes the market more volatile and unpredictable. Some experts blame government policy. They argue that local zoning laws restricted housing supply for years. When demand surged, there were not enough homes to meet it. This drove prices to unsustainable levels. Now that demand has fallen, the excess supply is crushing prices. There is no single explanation for what went wrong. The Dallas housing crash is the result of many factors working together. Low interest rates, population growth, investor speculation, zoning restrictions, and finally rising rates all played a role. Let's move forward and examine how the government is responding. ## government response. Governor Greg Abbott has been under intense pressure to address the housing crisis. For months, he remained relatively quiet. He focused on other issues like border security and energy policy. But as the crash worsened, he could no longer ignore it. In October 2025, Abbott held a press conference in Dallas. His tone was defensive. He acknowledged that the housing market was struggling, but he blamed federal policies for the crisis. He criticized the Federal Reserve for raising interest rates too quickly. He argued that Texas was being punished for its success. Abbott announced several measures to help struggling homeowners. He proposed a temporary property tax freeze for homeowners whose property values had declined significantly. He called on the state legislature to pass emergency relief funding. He also urged banks and mortgage lenders to work with borrowers who were falling behind on payments. He asked them to offer loan modifications and forbearance programs. But these requests were voluntary. He had no power to force lenders to comply. Critics were quick to respond. Democrats in the Texas legislature accused Abbott of doing too little too late. They pointed out that he had celebrated the housing boom for years. He had taken credit for the influx of new residents and rising home values. Now that the market was collapsing, he was trying to shift blame. Progressive housing advocates demanded more aggressive action. They called for direct financial assistance to homeowners facing foreclosure. They proposed using state funds to buy distressed properties and convert them into affordable housing. They argued that the crisis was an opportunity to fix long-standing problems in the housing market. Republicans in the legislature were divided. Some supported Abbott's limited intervention. They believed the market should be allowed to correct itself without government interference. Others worried that doing nothing would lead to a deeper economic crisis. Local governments in Dallas have also taken action. The city of Dallas launched a homeowner assistance program in November 2025. The program offers grants and low-interest loans to families who are struggling with mortgage payments. But funding is limited. The program can only help a few hundred families at most. Plano and Frisco have suspended some development projects. With so many homes already on the market, there is no reason to approve new construction. City councils are focusing on stabilizing existing neighborhoods rather than expanding into new areas. The federal government has been largely absent from the conversation. The Biden administration has focused on national housing policy, but specific relief for Dallas has not been a priority. Some members of Congress have called for federal intervention, but so far, no major legislation has been proposed. The reality is that there is no easy solution. Government programs can provide some relief, but they cannot reverse the fundamental forces driving the market down. As long as mortgage rates remain high and inventory remains high, prices will continue to fall. Now picture this from the perspective of ordinary people. ## what people are feeling right now. Across Dallas, people are scared. They are angry. They feel betrayed by a system that promised them security and delivered chaos. Homeowners who bought at the peak feel foolish. They followed the advice they were given. They bought homes they could afford. They trusted that real estate was a safe investment. Now they are watching their wealth evaporate. First-time buyers feel cheated. They saved for years. They sacrificed vacations and luxuries to build a down payment. They finally got into the market, only to see their investment lose value immediately. Some wish they had waited. Others wonder if they will ever recover financially. Longtime residents feel confused. They remember when Dallas was affordable. They remember when a middle-class family could buy a nice home without stress. Now the market is so volatile that no one knows what will happen next. Renters feel trapped. They stayed out of the market because prices were too high. Now prices are falling, but mortgage rates are so high that buying still does not make sense. They continue to pay rent, building no equity, watching from the sidelines. Real estate professionals feel exhausted. They have seen boom and bust cycles before, but this crash feels different. The speed and severity have caught even experienced agents off guard. Many are questioning whether they can survive in this industry. Construction workers feel forgotten. They built the homes that are now sitting empty. They worked long hours in the Texas heat to meet demand. Now they are being laid off. The jobs they thought were secure have vanished. Local business owners are worried. When people feel financially insecure, they cut back on spending. Restaurants see fewer customers. Retail stores see fewer shoppers. Service providers see fewer clients. The housing crash is rippling through the entire economy. This is not just an economic crisis. It is a psychological crisis. People no longer trust the system. They no longer believe that hard work and smart decisions will lead to financial security. That loss of faith is difficult to measure, but it is very real. Let's move forward and look at what the future might hold. Hashtag future predictions. Predicting the future of the Dallas housing market is difficult. Too many variables are at play, but experts have offered several possible scenarios. The optimistic scenario is that prices stabilize in 2026. Mortgage rates come down as inflation cools. Buyers slowly return to the market. Inventory clears. The market finds a new equilibrium at lower but sustainable prices. By 2028 or 2029, prices begin to rise again, though not as dramatically as before. In this scenario, most homeowners who bought at the peak eventually recover. It takes time, but values slowly climb back toward their previous highs. Foreclosures remain relatively low. The economy adjusts. Life goes on. The pessimistic scenario is much darker. Prices continue to fall through 2026 and into 2027. More homeowners go underwater. Foreclosures spike. Banks tighten lending standards even further. The housing market enters a prolonged depression that lasts 5 years or more. In this scenario, the damage spreads beyond housing. Construction companies go bankrupt. Real estate firms close. Local governments face severe budget crises. The entire Texas economy slows down. Unemployment rises. What started as a housing crash becomes a full-blown recession. Most experts believe the reality will fall somewhere in between. Prices will likely continue to decline for at least another year. But a total collapse is unlikely. The Dallas economy is still fundamentally strong. Jobs are still being created. Population growth has slowed but not reversed. The key variable is mortgage rates. If the Federal Reserve cuts rates significantly in 2026, demand could return quickly. Buyers who have been sitting on the sidelines could jump back into the market. This would stop the bleeding and stabilize prices. But if rates remain high, the market could stay depressed for years. High rates make homeownership unaffordable for many people. Without buyers, prices have nowhere to go but down. Another factor is investor behavior. If institutional investors decide to buy distressed properties at low prices, they could put a floor under the market. But if they stay away, prices could fall much further. Government policy will also play a role. If state and federal governments provide meaningful relief to struggling homeowners, foreclosures could be avoided. But if they do nothing, the wave of foreclosures could overwhelm the market. One thing is certain: the Dallas housing market will not return to the boom conditions of 2021 and 2022 anytime soon. Those days are over. A new normal is emerging. That normal will likely involve lower prices, slower growth, and less speculation. But the story does not end here. Lessons learned. The Dallas housing crash offers important lessons for policymakers, investors, and ordinary people. First, rapid price growth is not sustainable. When home values double in just a few years, it creates a bubble. Bubbles always burst. The higher prices rise, the harder they fall. Anyone buying into a rapidly appreciating market should proceed with extreme caution. Second, low interest rates create artificial demand. When borrowing is cheap, people buy more than they otherwise would. When rates rise, that demand evaporates. Policymakers need to be careful about keeping rates too low for too long. Third, housing markets are local. but they are influenced by national and global forces. Dallas cannot insulate itself from Federal Reserve policy. It cannot insulate itself from economic trends in other parts of the country. What happens in Washington and on Wall Street matters in Frisco and Plano. Fourth, institutional investors can destabilize housing markets. When private equity firms buy thousands of homes, they change the dynamics of supply and demand. They can amplify both booms and busts. Policymakers need to think carefully about the role of institutional investors in housing. Fifth, homeownership is not always the safest investment. For decades, Americans were told that buying a home was the key to building wealth. The Dallas crash proves that is not always true. Homes can lose value. People can get trapped. Diversification matters. Sixth, government intervention has limits. Even when politicians want to help, they cannot reverse market forces. They can provide relief around the edges, but they cannot make buyers appear out of thin air. They cannot force lenders to make risky loans. Markets are bigger than any one government. These lessons are painful. They challenge assumptions that many people have held for years, but they are necessary if we want to avoid similar crashes in the future. Now let's bring this to a close with a final reflection. The Dallas housing market crash is a story of hope turned to disappointment. It is a story of families who believed in the American dream and found themselves trapped in a nightmare. It is a story of a system that promised stability but delivered chaos. Governor Abbott's response, whether too little or too late, reflects the difficulty of managing a crisis that no single person or government can fully control. The forces driving this crash are larger than Texas. They are the result of federal policy, global economic trends, and human psychology. Thousands of families are suffering right now. They are watching their wealth disappear. They are making impossible choices between staying in homes they can no longer afford and walking away from everything they have built. Their pain is real. Their fear is justified. But there is also resilience. Texans are known for their toughness and independence. Communities are coming together to support their neighbors. People are finding ways to adapt. Life goes on even in the middle of a crisis. The Dallas housing market will eventually recover. It may take years. It may look different than it did before. But markets are cyclical. What goes down eventually comes back up. The question is not whether Dallas will recover, but when and in what form. For now, all anyone can do is hold on. Homeowners must make the best decisions they can with the information they have. Policymakers must provide what relief they can, and everyone must prepare for a future that is uncertain but not hopeless. The crash of the Dallas housing market is a reminder that nothing is guaranteed. Not home values, not financial security, not the American dream itself. These things must be earned. They must be protected, and they must be rebuilt when they fall apart. This is the reality facing Dallas today. This is the challenge facing Texas. And this is the story that will be told for years to come. The housing market has crashed. The governor has responded. And now everyone must figure out what comes next.